I've known Rick for a number of years, and when I first met him, I met him socially. And so, as a political guy, I never really knew Rick politically. Rick and I were hunting buddies and fishing buddies through a mutual friend, Foster Freese, long before we knew each other politically in any way. And so I had a chance to know the man before I knew the public man, the political man. A lot of times when you get to meet the man and you see the political man or woman and you meet the real person behind the scenes, you find out there's a very big difference between those people. There's the image, there's the veneer, there's the public presentation, and then there's the real person behind the scenes when you sit down with them. I think the highest compliment that I could pay to Senator Santorum is the man that you saw on the presidential campaign trail, the man that you saw in Congress fighting for the right to life when almost nobody else would do that publicly, is the same man that you talk to if you sit down and have a cup of coffee with him over breakfast. And there are people that you will meet in your lifetime and you think this is a truly great man or a truly great woman by their accomplishments, by the things that they've done publicly. But I think the most extraordinary accomplishment is when you meet somebody that has accomplished truly great things in their life, and they're also truly a good person. And so it is my honor and privilege to introduce Senior Advisor to Convention of States, a great man and a good person, Senator Rick Santorum.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That makes me uncomfortable, but I appreciate the kind words. Thank you all for being here. I know it's August. You're legislators, so you've got lots of things to do in August to have some time, and to take the time to come here just speaks volumes from you and your commitment and love of this country. So I just want to thank you deeply for being here. One of the things that I hear all the time as I travel around the country is, people talk about the Constitution and we can't mess with the Constitution. And I think people forget that the Constitution was written by folks like you. They were almost all state legislators. They weren't congressmen. They weren't people from the federal government. They were people from the states. And interestingly enough, not surprisingly though, that they wrote the Constitution to keep them in power, right? They had to give more power to the federal government than the Articles of Confederation, but they wanted you folks, the state legislatures, the states, to be at the top of the food chain. So when people say, well, don't mess with the Constitution, does anybody believe that the states are at the top of the food chain? Do you believe any of you are at the top of the food chain? I served in the House and in the Senate. I see Yvette back there. She served in the House. And yeah, you guys, we don't see you guys at the top of the food chain. You guys are shoveling the stables, right? You're just dealing with the crap we throw down to you, and you do what you're told, right? And if you don't do what you're told, we'll take your money, right? So that's when people say, oh, well, don't mess with the Constitution. Well, how did the Constitution get this way? Well, in part, because you gave up power. When I say you, I mean you, the state legislature. The biggest giveaway of power obviously occurred in 1913 with the 17th Amendment, where you controlled me. I was a senator, and I would have had to get appointed by you up until 1913. And you, because of that, had the power to stop everything bad that would affect your state from happening. Because if you didn't like it, you just pull the senator back. And you know how hard it is to get things done in the Congress right now with the Senate. You couldn't get anything done if it affected the power of the state and your prerogative to protect your rights and the rights of the people. But you gave that away. Well, the founders put a second provision in there to put you at the top of the food chain. So you gave away one, and this one, Article 5, you've never used. I don't know what that says for all you guys. I think the founders believed that people in the federal government would become corrupt with power because, well, every republic in the history of the world has seen that. So they anticipated that these people who were, leaders of the country would get the opportunity to try to grab more and more and more power. Now, they thought they put a provision there to stop that, but you gave it away. But they put a backstop. And so they expected legislators in Washington to abuse their power, but what they never anticipated is that you wouldn't use your power. And so I guess I'm just here to encourage you to step into the shoes that you were given in this country. And I hear the comment that Mark makes, there are no Hamiltons, there's no Jeffersons. Do you think that the Hamiltons and Jeffersons and the people there and the Madisons, that they thought they were Madisons and Jeffersons? They didn't see themselves as great. They were just ordinary folk. And if you read their biographies, they were ordinary people. And they didn't design this Constitution for angels and statesmen. You know what they really are asking you to do under Article 5? Is do what everybody, whether it's the school board or the Rotary or whatever, everybody, or you and your own family do, unfortunately. And that is, act in your own self-interest. So all I'm expecting at an Article 5 convention is that the folks coming to that convention will act in your own self-interest, which means taking power away from Washington and bringing it back to the states. If you simply do that, then you will accomplish what angels and statesmen will do. Because all this effort is about is to try to stifle Washington from destroying this country and bring some of the power and freedom back to the people and to the states. So act in your own self-interest. We don't need you to be angels. If you want to be power-hungry, ruthless villains, that's okay, because you're taking the power away from even more power-hungry, ruthless villains. So I understand people have concerns about this, and I get it. And I'm excited that you will be, over these next few days, will put to rest, in some respects, how a convention like this would operate, and you'll have the opportunity to share that with your colleagues when you get home. This is an important thing for the country. I've spent the last 40 years in politics. I know, I don't look that old, but I have. I've 40 years in politics and over 30 in elected politics and running for elected politics. And people ask me all the time when I travel around the country, because, why are you still doing this? And my question is, because when I get up in the morning, I look myself in the mirror and I see a country that over the past 30 to 40 years has gone to hell. And unlike most of you here, I was actually in a position to do something about it. And I failed. Not only I failed pretty miserably in most cases. And you can say, well, you tried, you passed this and you fought for this and you ran for this and you talked about these things. I'm not a person of the left. I don't believe in participation trophies. I believe that you're here to accomplish things and you have an obligation to fight, and particularly in my case, I take responsibility. I think it's like anything, any problem you have. The first step to solving the problem is taking responsibility for your actions. And whatever I did, as hard as I tried, I didn't do good enough. Didn't do it well enough. And there's still work to be done. So I don't know how many years I have left, but I believe of all the things I've looked at, and I've been in Washington, and I've been on TV, and I've run for president, I've done all these things, and I don't see anything out there that is going to have the opportunity to turn this country around more than this movement. And people would say, well, you know, how can you possibly, even if you get a convention, how can you get anything done? And my response to that is, I don't think it's all that important to get something done this first convention. I think the most important thing to do at this convention is to have a convention. Because once you have a convention, then you show Washington that you are now at the top of the food chain. Now, you may not be able to get anything done, or you may pass a few amendments and they may not be ratified, but you're now on their radar screen. They got to account for you. And all of the folks who say, well, runaway convention, or this, we don't know how it works, and this or this, all of that's now gone. It's now who's in charge. Just think about that. How many of you are angels enough that if you had all the power, you would always use it wisely and never abuse it? That's why we all have bosses. Congress doesn't have a boss. President doesn't have a boss. Not a real boss. You're the boss. You're the ones who are supposed to have the power. They trusted you to preserve liberty. And you have failed them. You have failed our founders. You have failed this country. And I say that as someone who just told you I have failed. So I'm not pointing the finger without pointing it back at me. We have all failed. But as Mark said, there is still hope. This battle is not lost. It is far from being lost. And today and tomorrow, you have an opportunity to do something to move the hope forward. And I thank you for doing it. God bless.
It can be done. It will be effective.
So I think there are people who've never even heard of it that are going to see this and be impressed, and I think that builds enthusiasm.
This is the defining moment and the last opportunity to get our republic right.
we need a solution as big as the problem.